Forbidden entry by Rabindranath Tagore, G71. Adapted and modified by Kulwant Singh Sandhu. Contents: 1 forbidden entry, 2 comprehension, 3 grammar page. 1 forbidden entry. One morning 2 young boys were standing by the roadside laying bets on an extremely daring enterprise. They were debating whether it was possible to take some flowers from the Madhavi creeper in the temple compound. One of the boys was saying that he would be able to do it, and the other was saying, "You never will to understand why this was easy to talk about but not so easy to do, requires a fuller explanation." Jaikali Devi, widow of the late Madhab Chandra Tarkabachaspati, was the guardian of the temple, which was dedicated to the blessed Lord Krishna. Her husband had been given the title Tarkabachaspati, Master of Debate, in his capacity as teacher at the village Letter 1E60OL Sanskrit Grammar School, but had never been able to prove to his wife that he deserved it. Some pundits were of the opinion that, because talking and arguing were his wife's preserve, he amply merited the title by virtue of being her master. Actually, Jaikali did not say very much. She could stop even the mightiest verbal torrents with a couple of words, or by saying nothing at all. Jaikali was a tall, strong, sharp-nosed, tough-minded woman. Through her husband's mismanagement, property endowed to them for the maintenance of the temple had almost been lost. His widow, by collecting all the arrears, fixing new limits, and recovering claims that had lapsed for many years, had managed to get everything straight again. No one could do her out of a single paisa. Because this woman had many of the qualities of a man, she had no female friends. Women were terrified of her. Gossip, small talk, and tears were all anathema to her. Men were afraid of her too, because she could rebuke the bottomless idleness of the men of the village, with a stare so fierce and silently contemptuous that it pierced their fat inertia, cut them to the quick. She had a remarkable capacity for contempt, and a remarkable capacity for conveying contempt. Anyone she judged to be at fault, she could blast with her manner and expression, with a word or with no word. She kept close tabs on everything that happened in the village, good or bad. She effortlessly dominated all its affairs. Wherever she went she was in charge, neither she nor anyone doubted it. She was expert in nursing the sick, but her patients feared her as much as death. If anyone broke the treatment or diet she prescribed, her anger was harder than the fever itself. Her tall, strict presence hung over the village like the judgment of God. No one loved her, yet no one dared to defy her. She knew everyone, yet no one was as isolated as she. The widow had no children, but she had taken on the upbringing of 2 orphan nephews. No one could say that the lack of a male parent had deprived them of discipline, or that they had been spoilt by blind affection from their aunt. The elder of them was now 18. From time to time the question of his marriage arose, and the boy was not averse to the bonds of love. But his aunt's mind was shut to that happy prospect. Unlike other women, she did not find the blooming of love in a young married couple particularly pleasing to contemplate. On the contrary, it was to her unpleasantly likely that, like other married men, her nephew would sit about the house, growing fatter by the day as his wife pampered him. No, she said, Pulin had better start earning than he could bring a wife into the house. Neighbors were shocked by her harsh words. The temple was Jaikali's most precious possession. She was never remiss in tending, dressing, and bathing the deity. The 2 attendant Brahmins feared her far more than the god himself. Formerly the god had not received his full rations, because there was another object of worship living secretly in the temple, a temple maid called Nistarini. Offerings of ghee, milk, curds, and butter were shared between heaven and hell. But under Jaikali's iron rule, offerings were enjoyed in full by the deity. Lesser gods had to find means of support elsewhere. The widow made sure that the courtyard of the temple stayed spotlessly clean, not a blade of grass anywhere. On a trellis to one side there was a Madhavi creeper. Whenever it shed dry leaves, Jaikali removed them. She could not bear the slightest invasion of the sanctity, cleanliness, and orderliness of the temple. Previously, local boys playing hide-and-seek had hidden inside the courtyard, and sometimes baby goats came and chewed at the bark of the madhavi. There was no chance of that now. Except on festival days, boys were not permitted to enter the courtyard, and hungry little goats beaten by sticks had to run bleeding to their mothers. Irreverent persons, even if they were close relatives, were not allowed to enter the temple yard. Her brother-in-law, who liked eating chicken meat cooked by Muslims, had come to the village once to see his relations and had wanted to visit the temple. Jay Kali objected so violently, there had nearly been a complete rift between her and her elder sister. The excessive zeal with which the widow watched over the temple seemed quite crazy to ordinary people. Whereas in other spheres Jay Kali was harsh and haughty and independent, in her care of the temple she surrendered herself completely to the image. Inside it she was mother, wife and slave. She treated it with watchfulness, tenderness, grace and humility. The stone temple with its stone image was the only thing that brought out her femininity. It was her husband and son, her entire world. Readers will now appreciate what limitless courage was required to steal madhavi blossoms from the temple courtyard. The boy concerned was Nalin, the younger of her nephews. He knew what his aunt was like, but discipline had not tamed him. He was drawn to anything risky, and was always eager to break restrictions. It was said that in childhood his aunt had been like that too. Jay Kali was, at the time, sitting on her veranda telling her rosary, gazing with motherly love and devotion at the image of the deity. The boy crept up from behind and stood underneath the madhavi. He found that the flowers on the lower branches had all been used for puja. So he gingerly started to climb the trellis. Seeing some buds on a high branch, he stretched with the whole length of his body and arm to pick them, but the strain on the frail trellis was too great, and it noisily collapsed. Boy and creeper fell sprawling on the ground together. This glorious feat brought Jay Kali running. She grabbed him by the arms and wrenched him up from the ground. He had been knocked badly by his fall, but one could not call this a punishment, because it had not come from a living thing. So now Jay Kali's living punishment rained down on the boy's bruised body. He suffered it in silence without a single tear. His aunt then dragged him into a room and bolted the door. He was given no food that afternoon. Hearing this, the servant girl Makshada begged tearfully and with trembling voice that the boy be forgiven. Jay Kali would not be moved. No one in the house dared give food to the hungry boy behind Jay Kali's back. The widow sent for men to repair the trellis and once again took her seat on the veranda with her rosary in hand. A little later Makshada came up to her and said timorously, "Thakama, the young master is weeping with hunger. Shall I give him some milk?" "No," said Jay Kali with her face set. Makshada withdrew again. From the room in the hut nearby, Nalin's plaintive whimpering gradually swelled into wails of anger until, much later, he was too exhausted to go on, and only an occasional panting sob reached the ears of his aunt as she sat telling her rosary. Nalin's distress had subsided into exhausted near silence when the sounds of another unhappy creature mixed with the distant noise of people running and shouting loudly disturbed the road outside the temple. Suddenly, footsteps were heard in the temple yard. Jay Kali turned and saw something heaving under the creeper. "Nalin," she shouted furiously. No one replied. She thought that Nalin must have somehow escaped from his prison and was trying to enrage her again. She stepped down into the yard with her lips grimly clenched. "Nalin," she shouted again as she neared the creeper. There was still no answer. Lifting up a branch, she saw an extremely dirty and frightened pig lurking in the thick foliage. The creeper that was a modest substitute in this brick-built courtyard for the groves of Vrindavan, the scent of whose blossoms recalled the fragrant breath of the gopis and evoked a gorgeous dream of dalliance along the banks of the Yamuna. To think that the sacredness of it, tended by the widow with total devotion, had been suddenly desecrated by this sordid event. An attendant Brahmin came with a stick to drive out the pig, but Jay Kali rushed to stop him and bolted the gate of the temple from inside. A short while later, a crowd of drunken Dharms arrived at the temple gate and began to clamor for the animal they intended to sacrifice. "Clear off, you scum," shouted Jay Kali from behind the closed gate. "Don't you dare besmirch my temple." The crowd dispersed. Even though they had as good as seen it with their own eyes, it was beyond belief that Ma Jay Kali had given asylum to an unclean animal inside her Krishna temple. The great god of all mortal creatures was delighted at this odd little episode, even if the petty god of mean and narrow social custom was mightily outraged. To comprehension. Question 1. Why was it considered daring for the boys to plan to take flowers from the Madhavi creeper in the temple compound? Question 2. How did Jay Kali Devi manage the temple's resources after her husband's mismanagement? Question 3. What was Jay Kali's attitude toward her nephew Pulin's potential marriage? Question 4. How did Jay Kali react when she caught Nalin attempting to steal flowers from the Madhavi creeper? Question 5. Why did Jay Kali protect the pig that entered the temple courtyard, despite her strict standards of purity? Answers. Answer 1. It was daring because Jay Kali Devi, the strict and formidable guardian of the temple, maintained tight control over the temple's sanctity, cleanliness, and orderliness, and she fiercely prohibited unauthorized entry or interference with the temple, including the Madhavi creeper. Answer 2. Jay Kali collected all arrears, fixed new limits, and recovered lapsed claims to restore the temple's endowed property, ensuring its financial stability. Answer 3. Jay Kali was opposed to Pulin's marriage, believing he should first start earning a living rather than becoming idle and pampered like other married men. Answer 4. Jay Kali grabbed Nalin, punished him physically, dragged him into a room, locked him in without food, and ignored pleas for leniency from the servant girl Makshada. Answer 5. Jay Kali protected the pig to prevent the drunken Dharms from entering and desecrating her temple further, prioritizing the temple's sanctity over social customs that deemed the pig unclean. 3 grammar page.